In this video, we're looking at the first of four major organic molecules of life. We're looking at carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are organic molecules. They tend to have a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio of carbon to hydrogen to oxygen. They are the simplest of the four organic molecules since they primarily consist of just those three different types of elements. And just a few monomer combinations account for the most common types that we find in cells. So depending on how those monomers are combined, that will determine the type of molecule that you have, type of carbohydrate. Two main groups of carbohydrates are simple sugars and complex carbohydrates. So simple sugars are what the body uses for energy for life. So these are the ones that can be used in the process of cellular respiration to produce ATP. A monosaccharide is a sugar with a 5 or 6 carbon ring, such as glucose or fructose, and it's called a monosaccharide. Remember, mono means one. Saccharide, you may not know, but it means sugar. So here on the left, top left, we see a 6 carbon ring. Each of these points on this hexagon, there's an implied carbon there. That's how this particular molecular structure in this type of model is represented. So even though we don't see a C at each of these points, there is a carbon there. And that carbon is bonded to the hydrogen and the other 2 carbons on either side, and here a hydroxide group. And depending where you're looking at the atom, it'll be bonded to a different atom. But it is a single unit. So this is a single molecule of glucose. This is a single molecule of fructose. Notice that it is a 5 carbon ringed sugar. Down here at the bottom, we see a disaccharide. A disaccharide, di means 2, again, saccharide means sugar. It's a sugar formed by two monosaccharides that are joined by a dehydration synthesis reaction. So sucrose or table sugar is an example of a disaccharide. Dehydration reaction. So remember that we have, so here's our glucose and our fructose. Up here, they were monomers. And here we have a hydrogen that can join to a hydroxide. Well, actually, it's this hydroxide that is joining to one of the hydrogens that's up in here. So basically what's happening is a water molecule again is being removed, and that opens a space for the oxygen to join these 2 carbons together. Because remember, oxygen wants to have full valence shell. It has 6 electrons, needs 2 more, so it bonds to a carbon here, bonds to a carbon here, and forms the disaccharide table sugar. Complex carbohydrates have between 3 and 100 monomers, and oftentimes they are attached to a protein. So an example would be a glycoprotein, and here we see a glycoprotein is going to have a protein attached to the carbohydrate, and this one is embedded in the cell wall. The important, actually, this is the carbohydrate up here, the little branching part, and the protein is what's embedded in the cell membrane, not cell wall. So glyco sugar here attached to a protein embedded in the cell membrane. And they play an important role in immunity. So you can see how that the sugar molecule is kind of extending from the cell membrane. They help with cell recognition or molecule recognition. So they pick up on certain things in the cells. So a cell will know whether what it has encountered is another friendly cell or whether it's an invader. We also have polysaccharides. So a polysaccharide it's another type of so a polysaccharide is another type of complex carbohydrate, but it consists of 100 or more monomers in a very long chain. So examples of this would be cellulose, chitin, starch, and glycogen. And what's different, they all still are hydrocarbons. They still contain these carbon rings. They still have a lot of hydroxides, as you can see. They may have a CH2OH group attached to them, or some other nitrogenous groups attached to them. But the main way that they differ is in the orientation of the molecules involved. So in the top left here, this is a cellulose molecule. So you can see it has a kind of organized and consistent structure throughout. And if you think about something like cellulose, it forms the cell walls of plants. So it's important to have that sort of rigid, very structurally secure type of form. This is chitin. Chitin forms the exoskeletons of things like insects. And as you can see, it still contains a lot of the same molecules, but different orientations. And in this case, there's actually an amino group that's attached to it. This would be starch. So again, same molecules, different orientation, and finally glycogen. Glycogen is how the liver stores sugar in the human body. So instead of storing a whole bunch of individual glucose molecules, they're joined together into these glycogen structures until they're needed, and then the liver can be induced, as we learned in one of the previous videos in chapter 1. The liver can be induced to release glycogen as glucose into the blood in order to raise blood sugar levels, or it can take up glucose to lower blood sugar levels. And finally, in this image, these are just the molecules that we were talking about. So the top left, we see a plant leaf up close, and you can see the cell walls. Again, those are composed of cellulose. That's why that structure is so important. Now, when we looked at that structure before, these units are not individual units of the molecule. Each of these is a cell wall, and that cell wall will be made up of those chemical structures that we looked at in the previous video. Top right, we see chitin making up the exoskeleton and even the wings of this dragonfly. Down here, we see potato starch. So potato starch is obviously it's a starch, has a different structure than what we've seen with some of the other molecules. And then finally, we see glycogen being stored in the liver. This is actually a disorder of glycogen storage in the liver, but you still kind of get the point. Just trying to show you some images of where these things might be found in nature. So those are our carbohydrates. We have our excuse me, we have our simple sugars and our complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates can be um, polysaccharides, which can be extremely large, consisting of 100 to more to the thousands of molecules joined together.